Welcome to another episode of the Journey to Gold Zone podcast. I'm Amy Begley, and my co-host is Rob Mullett, and our guest of the day is David Katz. He is the RRTC, the Road Running Technical Council Chair for USATF, and so many other things in the sport of road running. He really kind of makes some of the races happen behind the scenes, whether you know it or not. So welcome, David.
Thank you very much, and hopefully I will not put everybody to sleep, whoever's going to be watching this, and hopefully you'll have a good time telling some stories here and sharing some things about the background of these people that do things in the middle of the night.
Definitely. I don't know about Rob, but going from being an athlete and then a coach and now working on the administrative side, there are so many things behind the scenes that the athletes never get to see. And your kind of profession, what you've really dedicated your life to, is one of them things behind the scenes that a lot of athletes don't think about until it causes them problems. And you've been part of the course measuring system in not only the United States, but the world. So can you tell us how you even got into this little behind the scenes hobby that you do?
Well, first of all, I'm one of many. There are hundreds of course measures in the United States. There are 340 international course measures, and there are really probably hundreds and hundreds of more of national measures throughout the world. How I got started? Well, I ran track in college. I was not very good. I always joke around that this is a true story that I graduated with 5 school records from my college, which were broken the following year when they started a women's team. So I really wasn't very good, but I was a participant. And after college, I continued to run, but I became a teacher. And back in 1976, the school district where I was teaching, for whatever reasons, the budget was voted down, and the school district went on austerity, which means that none of the extracurricular activities were funded anymore by the school, and we had to raise money. So one of the top local runners started a 5-mile race on Thanksgiving Day to raise money for the community. And being a former runner and a science teacher, I got involved, and the course was short because at that time we were measuring courses basically by car. So I did some research, did some investigating, got in touch with some people, met Ted Corbett, who is really the founder of the course measuring system in the United States, and that was the beginning. That was nearly 50 years ago.
Oh, so it was born out of necessity.
So why is course measuring so important?
Well, it doesn't really make a difference whether you are the Olympic gold medalist or somebody just participating in a local 5K or a Thanksgiving Day race. People care about their performances. You can be going at 4.5 minutes per mile or 13 minutes per mile. We add a certain piece of integrity. Okay, timing is the easy part. We have electronic timing. We have all sorts of other areas to do that other ways. But the accuracy of a course is primary, is fundamental, is the basics of competition. It adds integrity to everything that we're doing.
And so that just means that every 5K that's run all over the world is going to be the same 5K because all the measures go by the same thing.
Absolutely. Consistency is very important. And what's interesting is, I'm glad you mentioned that, Amy. For the system that we are using today to measure all of the courses around the world is the same system we've been using since the late 1970s. And over the years, we have been exposed or presented with other methods of measuring. In fact, there's a system out there that we've tested and has been used, an electronic system. It's called Pegasus. Some of you have seen the Google Earth truck that drives down the street with the big electronics on the top. This is a similar system that can drive down the road at 100 kilometers per hour and take readings for a 50-meter radius and have incredible accuracy. And what we found out testing compared to what we're doing, we're within a couple of meters of accuracy over a marathon distance. So, it is remarkable that even with all the technology in the world today, the system that we are using can provide races all over the world, whether they're the New York City Marathon, the Olympic Marathon, or your local 5K, with the same accuracy for all of these events. And we're very proud of that.
So talk about this accuracy then, like how, as Rob likes to say, the Cliff Note version, please. How do you measure a course?
Well, anybody can measure a course, and I can teach you in a half hour just about everything I know and you can go out there, and if you have certain qualities, you can probably do as good of a job or even better job than I can. And so it's really a very simple process, and people are quite shocked how simple the process actually is. So what we do is we have a special little device here, and actually a couple of companies around the world make this little tiny device, and it mounts on the front axle of a bicycle. And it has a little counter on it, just like one that you would find on a measuring wheel. This one is a little bit more expensive because it can go at higher speeds. The ones that you see on a measuring wheel, if you go more than 3 or 4 miles per hour, the gears will start stripping on this. So this is mounted to the front of a bicycle on the axle. By itself, it's absolutely meaningless, the accuracy. It just counts clicks, maybe about 27, 28 clicks to the one turn of the wheel, depending upon the size of the wheel. But what we then do is we take a steel tape measure and we find a flat, straight road, at least 300 meters, and we measure an exact distance, let's say 300 meters. And we do that with a steel tape, even taking into account the expansion of the tape due to temperature. And we make a correction for that, and we measure that again. So we make sure from point A to point B is exactly that distance. In this case, it would be 300 meters. Once we have that, then we ride the bicycle on that calibration course from start to finish, from point A to point B, to see how many counts equal that 300 meters. And we do it a bunch of times, about 4 or 5, take the average, and now we have calibrated that measuring device that's on that axle for this day, for this temperature, for the tire pressure. Now we know how many counts equal 300 meters. Basic math, now we know how many counts equal 1 meter, or how many counts equal 5,000 meters, or 42,195, which is a marathon. Then we measure the course, and here's the key part here, taking the shortest possible route, all the tangents, come back, recalibrate, make corrections, because sometimes we're out there for a couple of hours, and that's it. That's the process right there. So Amy, Rob, okay, now the ball's on your side of the court. I'll send you one of these devices, and you guys can go out there, and I can retire into the sunset, along with the other hundreds of measures here in the United States. So actually, anybody in the United States, and it does happen, can measure a course for their local 5Ks or 10Ks. And the majority of courses that we receive, the Road Running Technical Council, over 1,500 courses a year, the majority of them are actually from people who are just like you. They're not World Athletics measures. It's just everyday local measures.
So you mentioned in that description there, shortest possible route. Can you explain a little bit more exactly what that is and how it is used on various courses around the country?
Well, it's a really very simple concept rather. And sometimes on some of these courses that we measure where we need police protection, I need to explain this to the police so they understand what we're going to be doing out there. And what I ask them or tell them is, listen, if I was racing down the road against you for $1 million and the road undulates, what pathway are you going to take? Will you follow the curve, or are you going to take the shortest possible path? And it becomes very simple when you explain it that way. And if the course is properly measured, the measurer, he or she, will be taking that tight tangent line throughout the course. And that's really one of the things that separates some of the better measures from others around the world. Their ability to identify that SPR, that shortest possible route, because technically a runner could not run really less than the measured course if the course is measured properly. So let me jump onto a part here that I've not only have I been in the I wouldn't call it the business, because everything I do for USA Track and Field and everything I do for World Athletics is basically a volunteer situation. Even of all the courses that I've measured, I've been part of, I've measured 6 Olympic Games. We don't get paid to do that. We have our travel covered. But I've also been involved in organizing road races since the late 1970s. And with the technology and GPSs, and everybody has smartphones, and the world has Strava and everything else, there's always been criticism over the past years when this technology has been available. The course is short, or the course is long, or the course is something else. And we have to do explain to runners that even though the technology is wonderful, it is virtually impossible for two reasons that a runner running in a race could possibly match the measurement process that we use if it's done correctly. One of the reasons is the technology itself. Okay, the technology can be affected, GPS, by buildings, by other conditions. The most important part, though, really, if you're on an open course where there's no buildings, is the ability for the GPS, the runner, to actually run the tangents and match that. Especially if you're in a mass race surrounded by hundreds of other runners, it's virtually impossible. Not the leaders in the race can't always do that. It's an impossibility. Um, one side note here. This is a fun story. Back many years ago, some of you might remember Rod Dixon, who won the bronze medal in 1500 meters in Montreal and also won the New York City Marathon. So I was good friends with Rod, and he wanted me to go down to New Zealand to help him measure some courses down there. And I was explaining to him the process and how he couldn't possibly run the course that I measured because of the way that I cut the tangents. And he laughed at me and said, I can run any course that you measure, David. Well, fast forward to the New York City Marathon, okay, where he is chasing down Jeff Smith in the last several miles going through Central Park, where Jeff is running down the middle of the road and Rod is cutting the tangents. He ends up winning the New York City Marathon. Rod did not run one step faster than Smith in those last 3 miles, but he ran every step smarter. And so for those of you out there, whether you are just a middle or the back of the pack runner or a world-class athlete, it's really important, if you really want to run a good time, get to know the course. Go online, see the certified course, go out there, study the course, because a lot of time is wasted out there while you're weaving around and doing other things. If you are capable of doing that, of course, depending upon the number of people that are in the race. And hopefully I didn't screw this up. I think it was Jeff Smith that Rod Dixon had beat, but somebody will correct me on this.
Well, we know there's some people that have memories of all the races. Speaking of memories, you talked about measuring the course at night. So, any crazy stories while you're out there measuring the course at night?
Well, let me tell you why we measure the course at night. There's a reason why we do that. One, there's usually less traffic, and that's really important because that really is going to affect how we measure the course. We want to try and have less obstructions out there, less cars. So measuring in the middle of the night was really quite helpful. Also, too, if you're going to be out there for a while, let's say measuring a marathon, a half marathon, keep in mind you've calibrated your bicycle, and that's calibrated due at a certain temperature because the tire pressure can change with temperature. Usually throughout the night, the temperature is more constant than if you start measuring early in the morning, then the sun rises, it gets hot, and then it gets cool again. So that's one of the reasons. Measuring in the middle of the night, it's fun. It's kind of peaceful out there. I did a lot of measuring for many years for New York Roadrunners, and I got personally acquainted with every raccoon in Central Park. We were on first name basis out there. It's a lot of fun. It's a very personal thing. It's also a very satisfactory process because what we try and do is piece the courses together ahead of time, like on Google Earth. And then when you go out there and measure and get all of the numbers and they all fit and everything stitches together nicely, it really is very satisfactory.
If I'm an event organizer and I'm having you come measure my course, you've done the measurement, it's accurate. Is there a reason I should bring you back to the event on race day to check that the course is set up correctly?
Okay, that's a good question, Rob. So, nobody's perfect. Okay, everybody has a possibility of making mistakes. I've made my share of mistakes, hopefully not too many in the past. But every now and then you read in the newspaper or some magazine online that a course was short someplace. Most of the time that happens because the course was not set up properly. Yes, sometimes the course is not measured properly, and that does happen. We all make mistakes. But most of the time, the majority of the time, is because the course was set up incorrectly. And I always recommend to races that really care about what's going on and care about the runners and possibly wreck it at their event to have the course pre-verified. That first of all, that means that there are two people measuring it, and the course is done by another expert measure. But more importantly is that that person who measured the course be there on race day to help the organizers set up that course. And this is very, very important because what otherwise happens is I would go, for example, let's say to Indianapolis and measure a 5K and document everything and then hand that over to the race director, all the documentation. And he or she hands that over to the person who's in charge of the course to set up, let's say, the mile markers or barricades. And he or she hands that off to some volunteer to do. And then it's not set up properly. And then there's a problem, and the race gets a bad mark because of that. Not only can this happen at a local 5K, it also happens at the Olympic Games. To give you a quick story, back at the Rio Olympics, I was the international course measure and for the marathon and the race walks. And about an hour before the first marathon, I was scheduled to be on the lead vehicle. I had a really bad feeling about something. So I was able to find somebody with a motorcycle, and we scanned the course ahead of the lead pack by about maybe 5 minutes. And I found most of the kilometer marks were in the wrong place, barricades were in the wrong place, and I'm moving them throughout the race with the runners hundreds of meters behind me. In fact, I get to the finish line and the 42-kilometer mark was off by 40 meters. And I'm not sure if it showed up on TV, but I was dragging that mark to the right place as the runners were coming down the final 400 meters of the course. So it really is helpful to have um, that person. In fact, it is a requirement of World Athletics for the World Championships and for the Olympic Games and for the World Road Running Championships and for the Race Walking Team Challenge that the measure be there to set the course up properly or to ensure that the course is set up properly. It's races are expensive these days, and race directors have to be you know diligent about saving money. But I think this is a small price to pay to make sure that that incredibly important basic aspect of the event is taken care of.
It's those little things that matter, but it also leads to the bigger question of, to be record eligible, right? And it has to be measured correctly. But then there's also other things that lead to how race courses can be record eligible, right?
Well, there's a couple of things here, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Amy. It's so let's just take a step back here. I told you at the beginning here that anybody can measure a course, okay? But we do have another grade of measures, which are World Athletics approved measures, World Athletics B level, and then another level up A measures. And these are required to measure and have courses certified with World Athletics for athletes who are looking to qualify for international competitions and also to get ranking points, which also allows them to qualify for entry into these international competitions like the Olympic Games and World Championships. So these are measures that have more experience, who have proven themselves over time, and we watch for potential measures to be upgraded to this level. And in the world, there are 340 World Athletics measures. That sounds like a lot, and you would wonder how many are in the United States. Well, we have more than 25% of all of the World Athletics measures. We have more than any country in the world by nearly 3 to 4 times. We have 73 World Athletics measures in the United States, and one of the reasons is we have more races than just about any country in the world, and that number is growing. So it's really important to have those measures with a little bit more experience, or sometimes much more experience, to measure courses for our athletes that are trying to reach these exceptional levels of qualifying or setting records. For example, if you want to qualify for the Olympic Games, it must be done on a World Athletics certified course and then rechecked by another World Athletic measure. Same thing holds true for American records and for world records. So this is a program that has been set up over time to ensure the integrity of the measurement system. So the qualifications, I just lost one of my earbuds. So sorry about that. It's what part should I start over with? Okay, so qualifications for the course varies depending upon what we are looking to do. For example, The strictest qualifications for course requirements are those for an American record and for a world record. So these are three things that are very important, three technical specifications. One, the course has to be accurate. So it has to be at least the distance. So if it's a marathon, it needs to be 42,195 meters, okay? Plus, the elevation change from start to finish cannot drop more than 1 meter per kilometer. This way, we're looking at that the course is not necessarily downhill. It doesn't make a difference what's in between. You can have the biggest hills and valleys, but that overall change in elevation cannot exceed 1 meter per kilometer. This is for open world record, and open American record. Plus the separation from the start to the finish, straight line as the bird would fly, cannot exceed 50% of the total distance. So I'll give you an example. The New York City Marathon, which the elevation change meets the specifications, a lot of people think it's a point-to-point course. But actually, if you draw a straight line from that starting line on the Verrazano-Narrows Bridge to Central Park at the Tavern on the Green, that separation is only 47, 48%. So it really is record eligible. Now you take a race like the Boston Marathon, which is a fantastic event, which is one of the greatest marathons on the planet. Unfortunately, the course is not record eligible because the start to finish is over 90% separation, and the elevation change is greater than 1 meter per kilometer. Regardless of the fact that you have these mammoth hills there, at the 23-mile mark, it still doesn't make a difference. So that's the requirements for an open American or world record. To qualify, it's a little bit simpler. Okay, for qualifying for the Olympic Games or the World Championships, any separation is allowed, but there can't be an elevation drop greater than 1 meter per kilometer. But then there's a third thing here. But an athlete can still get ranking points, which would get them to the Olympic Games or the World Championships on any course, regardless of the separation and regardless of the change in elevation. But there are penalty points that are assigned depending upon how much elevation drop there is. So that's really I hope you're taking notes there, Rob. I don't see you have a pen and pencil out there because you will be quizzed on this later on.
Yeah, I've had to answer way too many of these questions during the last marathon trials and qualifying. I am
Yes.
not a math person, but I did more math leading up to the Olympic trials than I've ever done in my entire life.
Well, that's why I wear a calculator watch.
Oh,
I'll send you one.
see,
It's
I know.
very helpful, very nerdy.
With championship qualifying now so closely tied to course accuracy and profile, what would you say athletes, coaches, and agents should be looking for in events when they're looking at making their schedule for competition?
Well, first of all, there's a balance here. Athletes near the top of their game, they have to make a living, so they have to look for races where they're going to get paydays to make a living, and this is really important for the survival of our sport. We're many years away from in the past of being an amateur sport for our top athletes, and we have to make sure that we have funding for them. And sometimes an athlete has to choose of running a fast course for a time or getting a payday to be able to feed their family, which is really important. So, but obviously, if you can find a fast course and still do the same thing and still get a good payday out of it, the one thing that I would look for is if you are an athlete representative, agent, or a coach looking for courses that that are fast if possible, and to ensure by talking to the organizers that the course is measured properly, that it has the correct certification, that all of those, and that they're also on the World Athletics calendar, which is also a separate issue, which is very important to make sure that those results count. So I would do that. Um, it's interesting still too. This is a little bit of a side note. There are still some race directors around the world that don't think that their courses need to be pre-verified, that they still must be checked after the race if a record is set. If somebody is going to go out there and go after an American record or a world record, if I was an agent or a coach, I would make sure that all of those T's are crossed and all of those I's are dotted, and also all of the other technical requirements, that making sure that you have drug testing on site, things like that, to make sure to protect our athletes. Athletes train for years and years, just like the two of you have done. You're both Olympians. And the people behind the scenes, the people like me and others and the organizers, we have to work just as hard to make sure that that stage is set for you. Obviously things can happen. Sometimes things go wrong, and the fewer the better. But we have a sacred responsibility to make sure that we're providing this for athletes out there. That's why we're here, and we're here for no other reason.
So a lot goes into it.
You've spoken a lot about marathons, mentioned race walk, very much the road running scene. Is there any type of certification for cross country, for ultra, for trail running?
I'm glad you asked that question.
Your favorite topic, I can tell.
It's not a favorite topic. I have been very, very fortunate in my career, and luckiest guy in the world. I was a technical director of the World Cross Country Championships in Aarhus, Denmark in 2019, and I will be the competition director. I am the competition director for World Cross Country in Tallahassee in 2026. And the course that we used in Aarhus, Denmark, was memorable because we actually ran on the roof of a building. That being said, there is no certification process on this planet for a cross country or a trail course by World Athletics, USA Track and Field, or any other member federation or governing body that I know. In fact, one of the things that we wrestle with right now with the RTC and with World Athletics is the percent of non-paved surfaces that we will allow even on a road course, because the rules basically said that the course must be made up surface. Okay, and basically they're talking about paved or concrete or asphalt or stone. Otherwise, we cannot get an accurate reading. I have been confronted over the past years about the accuracy of cross-country courses. There's this idea that people want to compare times on cross-country courses with times on tracks. I mean, the only thing that I think you should be doing out there, and this is a personal feeling, is course records, comparing performances on the same course. I don't think anybody should be comparing courses from one course to another. Cross-country running is the purest form of running. This is the starting line. This is the finish line. This is the route that you need to take to get there, whether it's 3 loops, 5 loops, 1 loop, whatever the case might be. And I remember back when the World Cross Country Championships were held in the Meadowlands in New Jersey. I was out there. The New York Roadrunners were the organizers of that event, and I helped with the course, measure it, and set it up. And World Athletics only requires that the course is near the distance, something close to the distance. If it's supposed to be 10K, if it ends up to be 10.123 10K, they don't care. And what I remember very clearly was the day or two before the event, the athletes were out there and they were checking out the course. They were checking out all the hills, all the bales of hay, all these things. And I remember Carlos Lopez was studying one set of some hay out there, and I remember that's where he made his move and ended up winning the championship. So it's all about just start, finish, and this is the course to be run. Accuracy is just absolutely unimportant when you come to cross country. And by the way, I have no idea what they do with a trail race. I haven't figured out the rocks yet, or the hills, or those things yet. So, by the way, that's not to say that I don't do my best to measure it a cross country course. When I was working the Aarhus World Championships, it was a 2K loop, and this crazy person here did measure that loop twice with a steel tape.
And was it a 2K?
Is within 2 or 3 meters of each of the 2 measurements.
Each of the 2 measurements, all right. And I'm sure your favorite thing to do is watch coaches run across the cross country course with the wheels, right?
Well, yeah, I haven't been to too many of those competitions, but I hear about that these coaches come out there with a wheel, and I just think that's hey, they're trying to do something. I applaud them for doing that. I don't think they realize how inaccurate that is. And the loss of contact when you're running with a wheel bouncing all over the place. And um, there's hey, it's their world. It's not part of my world. It's not part of USA Track and Field. It's not part of World Athletics.
So I think coaches doing that with the wheel is similar to the athletes coming and finishing a race with their watch and telling us that, the GPS said, oh, it's just too long, it's too short, or, when you wheel courses and the athlete keeps running past you because, heaven forbid, the wheel's not accurate, their watch is, and that's the mile over there, but not here. That's my favorite as a coach is, the athlete saying, my watch said. You've gotten that a lot too, I'm assuming.
I think they stopped asking me because they don't want my answer so most people only ask me once. So, I think you had mentioned some of my favorite experiences. Um, it's course measuring is a wonderful experience, and it's a puzzle. All right. And part of the things that I spend a lot of time doing is developing courses. People will call me up and say, "Hey, David, we want to have this race distance. These are the roads we can use." Um, and sometimes that's not easy to do. And one of my favorite examples was our last Olympic trials marathon, which was Orlando. And Orlando is a beautiful little city. A lot of people don't realize it has really nothing to do with Disney World. There's a nice little downtown. I know Amy was there for this, and um, so the men's and women's long distance running committee they had certain requirements after seeing the city itself, and they had some ideas about the course, and I met with them and I said, let me take a few cracks at this thing here. Give me your requirements. Tell me what you want and what you don't want. And the city of Orlando is really not that big to have a marathon. It's a beautiful little city, and John and Betsy Hughes from Track Shack, they did an amazing job of this event. They've been doing events there for 40 years. Um, One of the things that the men's and women's LDR committee did not want is to run on red brick. And they told me this, and I go, well, I'm not sure what you guys are talking about until I got down there. And most of the city is a suburban city. There are a lot of homes there, and most of the streets are red brick, which are uneven and can become very slippery when it rains. I said, okay, let me see what I can do. And we were looking to do a criterium course because we had to, because you couldn't find a loop really greater than 8 miles or so in there. Um, and then I took a look at the city, and then on one side of the city was a north-south train tracks that had trains coming every 15 minutes with no overpasses. And then that train track turned east-west about a mile north of where we wanted to finish, so we couldn't go too far north. Okay. And then about 2 or 3 miles south of towards south of the city, we had a major hospital system that we couldn't pass by because for obvious reasons. And then if you go 2 or 3 miles to the east, we ran out of city. And all you had was a major highway. So it actually took me about a month of just staring at maps on Google Earth, and it clicked, and then some other things clicked, and I wanted all the mile markers to line up so we can have splits at every mile throughout the entire race, not only for the athletes, but also for the viewing public, and making it work, making it good for the spectators, making it good for TV, and stuff like that is a lot of fun. It's So it's things like that. One of my other favorite stories is when we were working on the course in Rio for the Olympic Games. They had already designed the course, and I had gone down there for a test event, which was about 2 months before. And around the 35-kilometer mark, we passed in front of a long pier that went out into the water that had this magnificent ultramodern Museum of Tomorrow that was spectacular. And so after the test event, I went over there and walked around, and there was a pathway that went around that was about 5 meters wide. And I called up my contact, my boss from World Athletics, Paul Hardy, And I said, I think I can make this work by going around this magnificent museum. And host broadcast, the Olympic host, they loved it, and it was one of the major highlights of the marathon course on television. So, when I look to design these courses, I'm also looking to see how we can show off that city, that world. So that's a lot of fun to do.
Do you have a favorite course that you've ever designed, measured, managed?
Um, I think the Orlando Olympic Trials course, the whole event, um, even though it was warm and controversies related to that, I think, again, Track Shack with John and Betsy and his team did an amazing job. Um, I had my council members, top measures in the world, Mark Neal and Justin Koo and Jane Parks come in there. We had every single turn on that course covered. Um, we had a lot of other people involved. Um, Doug Thurston was involved and they were helping with the course, and Dave McGilvery with his team was out there helping on the course and the lead vehicles. And every part of that course was buttoned down, and it really hats off to the city of Orlando for doing an absolutely incredible job of being a great partner from all sides, but I only dealt with the technical side. I mean, anything that we needed out there was just we were able to do, and it was a really great experience. They everybody let us do our job, and we had really lots and lots of good people, and of course the leadership from USA Track and Field were partners in this every step of the way. So we were very excited about that. Of course, working at the Olympic Games, you can never match that experience. Um, but also the pressure. You're taking that to a level that is unprecedented, and to get it right there is very, very important. And like I said, I've done 6 Olympic Games. I think hopefully I have one more left, but we'll see. So that's kind of exciting.
So much behind the scenes that the athletes don't know, and I hope that they get a little bit more perspective and at least understand all the time and energy and passion that go into putting on these events.
So when are we going to get you two out there to measure? That's it.
I do have one more question.
Oh,
Yes.
all right. He has another question. I like it.
Well, before that, it's Molly Seidel, who is the bronze medalist in Sapporo. She actually, after she had won her bronze, the following year, she actually came at the annual meeting to our meeting of the Road Running Technical Council. So she wanted to learn more about the whole measuring process, and that was really kind of cool. One other thing that I have done is for the two of the Olympic Games that I've worked at, I made up these little brass markers for each of the kilometer marks, and maybe the high point of my career. Okay, this is not a measuring story, but it's associated for Sapporo, Tokyo. As you know, we had to move the marathon and the race walks to Sapporo because the IOC mandated that we had to move it because of the heat. Even though it ended up being hotter in Tokyo than it was in Sapporo. So we had the 3 race walks there, and we had the 2 marathons. The day before the first race walk, the head of presentation came to me and said, David, we need you to do the ceremonies here. And I said, I'm not allowed to do that. I said, why don't you get the mayor of Sapporo? And they said, well, it's an IOC rule that has to be an IOC member or a member of the federation. And because you're on the World Athletics Competition Commission, you're the highest ranking. Oh, I just dropped that. Sorry.
No worries.
We can still go, right? We can still go.
Oh yeah.
Okay. And because you're on the commission, you should be doing it. And I said, I'm not going to do it without Seb Coe's permission. And I said, you ask Seb if he says yes, otherwise I'm not doing it. And so I get a call back the next hour saying, put your tie and jacket on. So I ended up doing 3 of the 5 ceremonies, and I got to hand the award to Kipchoge and the other silver and bronze medalists. And afterwards, I presented those medallions, those markers, to each of those 3 winners, and I also, of course, gave them to the women winners as well. And when I gave it to Molly Seidel, she was in the recovery room at the time at the marathon there in Sapporo, and and I told her this was my Olympics too, and we both started crying. So it was very sweet. Anyway, sorry for the side story there.
That was a great side. It was a great side story.
Yeah, very, very good side story, and a perfect segue actually to my question that is, if I'm a person that is interested in becoming a course measurer and maybe a few years down the line wants to get into measuring international competitions, where do I start? Who do I reach out to?
Well, the first thing you should do is go to the USA Track and Field website. There's a lot of information on how to measure courses there. You can contact us at the ROTC. You can contact me. Information is available there. There's a ton of information on how to do this stuff, and we need young measures. I mean, not only do we need young measures, we need young officials. We're all getting older, and we have to prepare the next generation, the next set of officials, the next set of administrators, the next set of measures. We need these people to come into our sport. And you know what's interesting, every now and then you see athletes coming back into the sport. Obviously, you guys are working in the sport right now. Just a quick side story. I worked at the Millrose Games for over 30 years, eventually becoming the meet director. But I remember my first year working at Madison Square Garden back in 1979, I think it was, or 78. And I'm there in my tuxedo, just in absolute awe in Madison Square Garden. You know, at that time we had 15,000 people there. And talking to some of the other officials there, many of them with silver hair, like what I have right now. And I introduced myself. Hi, I'm David Katz. What's your name? And the man says, my name is Lindy Remigino. And I took a step back because that name doesn't ring a bell to you. He was the Olympic gold medalist in the 100 meters. And then I go over to the high jump and I see this tall gentleman standing there. I go, hi, my name is David Katz. My name is John Thomas, Olympic silver medalist in the high jump. And there were many Olympians, medalists who were working as officials. And we are fortunate right now that, you know, on men's and women's track and field and other committees, we have former Olympians, former medalists who see the need to come back into the sport and help move the sport forward. There's no money here. There's no payday. There's just satisfaction that we are providing a very valuable service for the sport that we all love.
Yeah, thank you. I know.
Thank you.
That's why people should always thank the officials and the volunteers and the police officers and everybody else making the, the events happen. Otherwise, it doesn't get going if people did not volunteer. And that's what people forget about our sport is. There's people like you and others that do put a lot of time and energy and passion into it. And you're right. There are not big paychecks at the end of the event. There is sunburns and
maybe a t-shirt, maybe a hat.
A t-shirt, hat, a pin, and a sunburn.
That's right, and a handshake.
It's true.
And sometimes you get yelled at too. So.
I mean, every now and then I give hugs.
Yeah, it's a great feeling to making it work. Mm-hmm. It really is. It's a great feeling, and when all the numbers work, it's really it's just for me, it's wonderful.
I love it. All right. Is there anything else we missed?
I don't know. I mean, I can tell you stories until the cows come home, but I think, keep it short, and I'm available. Actually, I'm available 24/7 around the world. I do travel a lot, but people who know me, to answer questions, to help people move forward with this, and we need more measures. That's all. And it's not hard to do. There's one thing that I think when we had spoke before this call, what are the requirements for a good measure? So let me just add that right now. One, of course, you have to be able to ride a bicycle, and you need to be able to ride a bicycle well. You don't need to be able to ride fast, because I certainly don't ride fast anymore. But you have to be able to obviously ride without discomfort. If you're going to ride a marathon course, you have to be able to do, at least that 26 plus miles plus all the calibrations before and after. So you have to be relatively fit. And not only when I mean to ride a bike well, you have to be incredibly steady. You have to be able to ride that straight line. Just think about this. You're going to be riding a calibration course that's a straight line for 400 meters, and you have to ride that pretty darn straight. You can't be wobbling. Okay. The second thing, you have to be good with basic mathematics. There's a lot of math that's involved with this, and so you have to be able to do that. You also have to be fearless. You have to be able to measure tangents, and you're not always going to have police protection out there. All right, and you know that's really fundamental to be able to measure that shortest possible route. The other thing is you have to be that type of person who is looking to where is that next mistake going to happen. Okay, so you have to be able to say, okay, does this look right? Does this look right to you? Where is that mistake? Am I making mistakes? Because those people who think that they can't make a mistake will be making mistakes. So those basically are and the ability to document everything afterwards. And you know, it's like anything else. You don't really learn how to drive until you get your license. I mean, I've come across some people that no matter how much I work with them, they're never going to be a good measure. And then, for example, I came across a friend of mine who is a cyclist, who's also a runner, who's a really smart individual. The first time I measured with him, he had never measured before. He was as good as any measure I've ever seen. So it's far from rocket science. It's a really simple process, but the process has to be done correctly.
Well, David, this was enlightening in many ways, and we appreciate the time and the passion that you put into this, and we hope that everyone else does too.
And hopefully those people who are watching this get past the first 10 minutes without falling asleep.
It'll be great.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Rob, for having an opportunity to share my passion with you guys.
Oh, thanks, David. We appreciate it.
And by the way, thanks to all the members of my council. They do most of the difficult work. Justin and Jane and Mark Neal and all the others out there, and Andy Carr for his work with records, and Doug Thurston, all those individuals that help do all the heavy work and making our council seem like a public utility.
Well, I know that you all answer my calls when we find races that may not have done things correctly, and you guys will kind of be like Superman and fly out there at the last minute and get it done for us.
We do what we can. So thank you again for this opportunity.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.